I think the first thing is recognizing that you are not what you do, right? And for me, this monumental thing I was able to accomplish as far as getting drafted was a dream come true, just not for me, but for all these young guys that get drafted, NFL, MLB, NBA, you win a lottery, your family feels like they've made it. So you carry this weight of, I'm the way out for everybody. So it took me a very long time to find out who the hell Jay Williams was without the sport of basketball. But I think one of the things that I did that was extremely beneficial is that I love business, right? And my dad worked for Amex for 20 plus years. And that was one of our goals. You know, the more money I made in basketball, I just wanted to use that platform to leverage to build a business. I had no idea what business that was yet. We were still ideating in the process of me playing. But when my accident happened, you know, after I went through multiple surgeries, one of the things that inspires me is when you see businesses that have really good boards. And all the CEOs I've ever met, you know, if you talk to them a day or two before they're going into their board meeting, they're nervous, right? They're anxious, their palms are sweaty because they have to present to the board members about where the company was, where the company is, and where the company is going, and the steps that he took in order to help the company either to their demise or to their benefit. So it was the first time I started thinking about myself, wow, why don't individuals hold themselves to the same level companies do? And I started thinking, who's on Jay Williams' board? And at the time, you know, I talk about this in my book because I was 23 years old, couldn't play basketball anymore. I had a 17, 18-year-old drug dealer who was on my board, right? It was a guy that I just ended up talking to, and I still was taking Oxycontin because I was addicted to it from my accident. I had friends who were doing careless things who were on my board. I didn't have the foundation of the people that needed to help me be where I wanted to be. And it was the first time I started looking at that and saying, okay, you know, I'm gonna have multiple boards. I'm gonna surround myself with people that make me better. If that was Pastor Carl, who is like a brother to me, who runs Hillsong, you know, United, right? That church, and you know, helping me be a better human being, right? With the women who were in my life, or you know, just finding God, or whatever that may be. Being even with my own business, like CEOs like Carl Liebert, who I saw the way he was with his family. There was no, he balanced going to work and then his family, the importance of family, and how much he loved his wife and his kids. And I started building out my board, man. Ever since I built out my board, they've held me accountable. And it was gruesome because I went through the process of going through my, you know, the negatives and the positives, and them telling me, well, look, you lie for random reasons, little petty white lies that you didn't even need to tell. You're not accountable. You say you're going to be somewhere, you don't show up. You're late. You know, get depressed very quickly if I challenge you. And you're hearing all this stuff, and as I'm writing this stuff down, it really resonated with me. I was like, wow, okay, these are some of my weaknesses that the people around me who love me, who have done things the right way, see in me, and how do I work on those? And that was the first step in me taking towards me finding out who I was and where I wanted to be. I was always a kid that didn't receive the recognition early in my life. Everybody else got it. So, you know, for me, I remember the first time I got my first letter from a college was going into my junior year, and my head coach in high school, a guy named Mark Taylor, I still love you to this day, Mark, but he was like, you need to commit to Fordham. You need to go to Fordham right now. I don't know if the opportunity is going to be better for you. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, okay, like, do I commit to the first school that sent me a letter, or do I have this tattoo on my wrist where actually the first time I tried to commit suicide, I tried to cut my wrist that says believe, because my mother's always talked about either if you don't believe in yourself, then who's going to believe in you? And I think that was one of the benefits of being an athlete that was always overlooked, in my opinion. It forced me to work harder. It forced me to put my head down. Now, there's some disadvantages to that too. You can get lost in the work process and not be present to some of the things that are happening in your life. But I think that mentality and being around people that inspired me, not by their words, but more so by their actions. I hear a lot of people talk every single day. And I was one of these guys, Tom, when I was playing. You know, you're 21 years old, you have no idea who the hell you are. You're trying to learn on the process, and you try to do things the right way. But I think for everybody, you get into this preachy thing about, look at me, look about what I do. And I started not to listen to what people said, but started to watch how people acted and how they interacted with other people. And that helped me set the bar for where I wanted to be. You know, this is actually the relationship that I'm in now. Is probably one of the most challenging relationships that I've ever been in because she forces me to address issues. I mean, we all have issues, right? To some degree, and there are issues I have relationship-wise too. But when somebody forces you to address and you allow yourself to be vulnerable and you try to communicate the worst parts about who you are, that overall, that sheds you, right? It's so rewarding to almost feel like you're coming clean. That's what writing my book was for me.
Right.
And nobody knew I tried 2 attempts at suicide. I thought that, gave insight into my weakness. But, then you start talking to other friends. One of my really good friends who was my lawyer got a divorce. His wife up and left him, really didn't go through therapy, just kind of on the whim, was gone. And I started thinking about, for the first time, wow, that's his accident. I'm watching him go through the same thing I went through, just in a different vertical, a different silo. So helping other people address their issues while I'm still learning myself. I'm only 35 years old. I don't have all the answers too. So I think I'm starting to appreciate the process. And I found relevance in the process of it's not always going to be easy. There are going to be challenges. There's still going to be curveballs thrown at me. But I can't become introverted. I have to continue to get outside myself because when you're uncomfortable, that's the only way you're going to grow. I think for 10 plus years after my accident, I held a lot of animosity because I see guys that I was better than, that I thought I was better than. I thought I was better than everybody. I mean, that's what, you have to be crazy to be great at something, right? And seeing these guys that were signing this $135, $150 million contract, and that used to sit with me, so I was so angry about it. Like, the guy doesn't deserve that. I know things that guy does, and not that I was saying that stuff out publicly, but that's the conversations you have in your mind, and you start having this conversation with yourself and God, like, why the hell me? Like, what did I do to deserve this pain for the rest of my life? So it did sit with me. It still does sit with me to a certain degree. I'm not angry about it anymore, but I still miss the game that was once my safe haven. For me growing up, Tom, every relationship is different, okay? My dad worked a lot. He spent a lot of time in New York City. My mother went back to school while she was a guidance counselor to finally become principal. There was a history of domestic violence in my house. I think learning about who I was and why I made my mistake allowed me to open my eyes up to finally forgive my father about the mistake that he made with my mother. Now, I don't know if my mother will ever forgive my father for that, but for me, it was a process of learning about life in general and about, hey, who I was 15 years ago, maybe I wasn't trying to be the best version of me. It's amazing how many people you talk to don't actually think for a second about trying to become better. You're so busy in the minutia and the clutter that you're running through your life with your head down. And it was the first time I had to sit and evaluate. And that process within itself is rewarding, peaceful to my soul and my spirit, but still drives me because I still know I have such a long way to go, and I have to continue the process. It never stops. First, I've seen it on a multitude of levels. It was really funny. My rookie year, you get so damn excited because you're playing against these guys that you've been dreaming of fucking playing against your entire life, right?
And you actually crossed over with Jordan, right?
Well, yeah, I did, even though he dropped multiple buckets on me. And then told me how he was going to do it, which was impressive because he was 40 years old. It still pisses me off to this day. I don't know if you can tell. But I remember we were playing against the Lakers, Tom, and we were out here in LA. And, look, I always try to outwork people, right? That's just how I made my mark. So the game was at 7. It's like, you know what? I'm going to come to the Staples Center because we're playing. This is when the Lakers had Kobe and Shaq. Okay, this is like the championship Lakers. It's like, I'm going to get there at 3 o'clock. And I want to make sure I make 400 made shots before I go back into the room, and then I sit in the sauna and I get ready for the game. So, get in the car, get to the gym, get there, and as I'm walking onto the court, who do I see? I see Kobe Bryant, already working out. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of cool. It's Kobe. What's up, Kobe? And so I put my sneakers on, and do you ever get lost in what you do, where you end up like, wait, it's been an hour and a half. I'm here. I'm in it. So once I set my foot across that line, I started working out. And so I worked out for a good hour and a half. And when I came off, after I was done, I sat down, and of course I still hear the ball bouncing. I look down, I'm like, this guy's still working out? He was working out, like, it looks like he was in a dead sweat when I got here. And he's still going. And it's not like his moves are nonchalant or lazy. He's doing like game moves, you know? I sit there and I unlace my shoes. I'm like, I want to see how long this goes. So I sit out there and watch another 25 minutes. And he got done. I was like, okay, I think I've seen enough. Go play, you know, come back, get in the sauna, get ready for the game. That game, he drops 40 on us, okay? And after the game is over, I'm like, I have to ask this guy. Like, I have to understand, like, why he works like that.
Right.
So after the game is over, I'm like, hey, Kobe, like, why were you in the gym for so long? He's like, because I saw you come in. And I wanted you to know that it doesn't matter how hard you work, that I'm willing to work harder than you.
Wow.
And he's like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not saying I dislike you as a person. You inspired me to be better.
Right.
And it was the first time I started to see this level of competitiveness where I said, I need to start doing more.
Right.
Wow. Like, and everybody that I've been around in my life who's been uber successful, and I'm not talking monetarily, I'm even talking spiritually. You know, my girlfriend said something to me that really inspires me, okay? Because I think as I got lost into my career, and I want to jump to the story, but as I get lost into my TV career, I had a tendency to put all my energy and my time into that, almost to make up for what I felt like I lost before, okay? And she said, you know what, if you were to allocate a percentage of the energy that you put into your career, into yourself, and learning more about yourself, and learning more about yourself in relationships, you'll be successful. And it was the first time I had to sit back and say, wow, that's really powerful. Because I think a lot of people, when you have to start addressing other things, you get mentally tired, right? When I address TV, I don't get mentally tired. This is what I do, right? But when there's an unknown, something that you haven't felt like you mastered, I'm unsure about it, when it gets frustrating, like, you know, who are you going to be? Are you gonna be that person that wallows in their self-pity? Or are you gonna be that person that says, you know what, okay, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, but how can I be better? And I think that's what I talk about, that relentless mentality to want to be better at just life in general. Tim had trained Michael Jordan, he trained Kobe Bryant, but I think a lot of people get lost in the fact that he trained them physically. He trained these guys mentally too. And I know for me, you know, my leg, I have atrophy on the outside of my left leg, okay? This muscle here, since I lost my nerve, it's gone away. And I have drop foot. So my game had to change. And very much like life, you're used to doing one thing at 21 is different than when you're 35 years old, right? And I had to be open enough and vulnerable enough to accept the fact that my game had to be different in order for me to be effective. But like I said earlier, it's so hard when my brain sees things and my body before, I guess this is a gift of being an athlete to that caliber. Right? I see it gone, right? If I bring the ball down the court and there's a screen coming, you know, to your right, and you glance over, if I see your eye glance within that split second, I'm gone. Because I see you take your eye off of me. So now all of a sudden my game's changed at 21 years old. Now all of a sudden that first step is like, it's molasses. It's non-existent, right? So now am I willing to say, I'm not that fast anymore. I have to work you into the screen. I have to take my time. I have to actually come off shoulder to shoulder. I have to use my body more to create separation. Hey, my jump shot wasn't the best. I have to be a better shooter because I don't have that explosion anymore. And a lot of people say, hey, that seems pretty easy, but to mentally accept that I'm a different person now, and to help other people see I'm a different person was challenging. And the major part that was the most difficult was seeing myself. So as an athlete, I was used to people looking at me in a state of awe, right? And it was something you thrive for, you work your entire life for. So when the kid or when somebody would come up to me, they're like, oh my God, Tom, like your show is amazing, right? And you're used to that affirmation of what you do. You're like, all right, it's worth me putting the time. Whereas that look for me changed, and that look really made me depressed too, because it was a look from, oh my God, you're amazing, to a look of, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Or, what happened? Or you used to be that guy before you messed up. And people don't say things maliciously. They say things more so because it's awkward and they want to start a conversation. And those things would drive me insane. And Tim forced me to talk to him about those things. It was the first time I started having conversations. I'm talking like on the court. I'll be on the court doing a drill and he's like, you have drop foot. And all of a sudden I would attack the drill a little bit more. And next drill, he'd be like, it used to be that guy, you were good. And I would, let's get up more shots. So he started to find ways to motivate me and started to take the anger out of the equation for me too. And that was a hell of a first step in the process of me rebuilding who I was as a person. I think even when I started going through therapy, I had a lot of rhetoric, right? Because I didn't want to face it. Have you ever had a bad dream and you wake up and you're married, right?
Yes.
And you see your wife and you're like, okay, that was a dream. Right? I think for a long time, for 2 or 3 years, I thought I was living a fucked up dream. And I kept waiting to wake up. Tim was the first person that forced me to talk. And it's amazing when you just open your mouth and you start saying how you really feel about stuff. I mean, think about how many people really say how they feel.
Virtually nobody.
Exactly. And I think Tim was the first person I actually started to have like full transparent conversations with.
Right.
I was like, I don't like the person I was. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I cheated a lot on my girlfriend. I lied a ton. I was consumed by money. I used to gamble. I never gambled. I would say things just because it was the right thing to say. Not that I was maliciously a bad person.
Right.
I just never even thought about what my actions were. I was too busy moving. And Tim forced me to stop. And I still stop myself to this day. I press pause in life sometimes, and I think it helps. I recalibrate.
To try to get out of an obsessive thought?
Yes, or just to, even to get out of funks, whatever maybe. I'm a firm believer in that you have to find balance in life, right? So there are gonna be times where your journey is gonna be down here and it's gonna be tough. And the same when things get high. You sign a new deal, or you have to be able to keep things in perspective. And I think sometimes when I stop, I force myself to assess, okay, what are the benefits? Where are the negatives? How can I turn this negative into a positive? All right, let me make sure that I don't get too high and I continue to keep my head down and work harder because I want to achieve more. If it's not for me, for the people that work for me or for my girlfriend or my mom deserves better. So I try to find that one thing because I'm very goal oriented that I need to work towards. And once I achieve that, it's another goal. And I don't want it to ever stop because that's what life should be. I lived a life that has been different. Not for better or for worse, it's just, I feel like I'm old soul. Let me address one other thing that you said that I find fascinating, because I think it's an epidemic within our culture. In the American culture, it's so funny, like the comeback, right? When I wanted to write my book, I got turned down by multiple publishing agencies. And people are like, well, you didn't come back.
Right.
And I think that's like the American, through the American scope of how we look at things. Like, well, did it come back and crush it? And that's a comeback story. And I'm like, shit. No, I came back mentally.
Right.
That's a story. That's a story that should be cherished for younger kids out there, for older people out there. It doesn't matter. You don't have to come back and do what you did before and do it exponentially better. You have to come back better as a person and really value that process. Right. That's a comeback. That should be an American story. So yeah, I think my goals are a little bit outlandish for myself. I want to own my own media network one day.
My man.
That's where I came out, I was like, hey, this is like godsend, right? I have a 2-bedroom apartment in New York. My mom comes and unfortunately there's a big camera in the room and there's lights and she's like, are you filming me while I sleep? And I was like, no, but now I may, because it may be interesting content, But I think about, hey, how can I be bigger and better? And I think about now, how can I break outside this mold of just being a college basketball analyst? That's how I got my foot in the door at TV.
Right.
But I'm infatuated with the process of TV because as you know, it's amazing when you have to be vulnerable to talk about issues that a lot of people aren't willing to talk about on TV. Like there's something special about that. So if that's me having conversations with, somebody I'm interviewing, or me being lost in, telling dialogue, I love it. Like it's my passion. It's my new basketball court. I associated bigger with monetary value. So for me, it was like, hey, I could have made $250 million in my NBA career. How do I achieve that?
Right.
Like that's the goal. That's what bigger means. And bigger has changed for me to now meaning impact, right? So yes, I do want to have my own media network one day. I do want to help other people film content. I love content, but I rather it be. I don't worry about the money now. The money's going to take care of itself. If I impact people, the rest will happen. Me telling my story was selfish at first because I wanted to write a book for me. I needed to write a book for me. I needed to sit down and really go through the shit, the good, the bad, and really write it out. And I didn't even know if I wanted to share it at first because a lot of people, when they write a book, they're not gonna be fully transparent. They're gonna be worried about what is my image I'm portraying to everybody else? Is this gonna hinder me from getting other deals? Can I lose deals that I currently have? And writing it, after I got done, I was like, whew. It's like, wow, shit, that feels good. It feels good. And it didn't matter what people said, good or bad. Some reviews killed my book, other reviews loved it. I didn't write it for them at first. And then after I started hearing people tell me their stories, oh shit, like this is what it's all about, And I used to say it all the time, why me, why me, why me? And all of a sudden that conversation changed to, yeah, fuck yeah, like why not me? Like why not me? And I think the more you can start looking at facing adversity by saying, why not me? You approach things with a completely different mentality than a person who feels like they're going to be a victim. You start becoming the hunter again. And the more you can stay with that hunter mentality, it will pay dividends down the line. And I think choose is a really imperative word because a lot of people choose not to, follow up on things that happened in their past or sit time to reflect. And that's why, like I alluded to earlier, it's amazing. It's like this hamster wheel that people just, like, I see it all the time. I think New York City is a prime target for it because I can walk down the street and it's, look, there's an epidemic with homeless people in New York, right? I think it's throughout our country too. And there was a guy who lived outside my apartment, and I have a place in Tribeca. I've worked really hard for it. And it would shatter my soul every morning when I would get up in my apartment and I have these big windows and I look out and I see this guy who's homeless, right? And I was sitting there one day and I saw so many people just going by him, just on their phone, not paying attention to him. Not that he was looking for attention at all. And I got out of my apartment, I went down and I started talking to him, and you start finding out this guy and his story and where he's from, and the fact that he lost his daughter in a really bad accident. He used to work on Wall Street and his wife divorced him, and he can't pick up the pieces. And look, I wanted to help the guy, and you try to talk to the guy. I don't think he was all there anymore. I think he had succumbed to the just the resentment and the contention he had for the world in general, okay? But he said something that was so powerful to me. Because in a moment when he was talking about all his frustrations, he said, you know what though? I am where I am, and only I can change it. And I remember, wow, as much as we're talking, you are the only person that could change it. At the end of the day, people can want to help you as much as they want to help you. And I don't think complaining is the answer either. I think vulnerability and talking to people about what's actually going on in your life gets them invested in you. And the more you listen to them, gets them invested, you invested back in them. And that's when a bond is formed. But that person can only take you so far. You have to want to take yourself to a different place. And if you don't have that, then you're going to stay stuck. And a lot of people choose to stay stuck. And we see it every single day. I mean, a lot of people, they may not properly articulate that, but they live their lives that way. I mean, I think the more you're willing to confront it, the more you're willing to talk about it. I think talking helps, man. I know this sounds cheesy.
Not at all.
But I talk to myself, okay? People have seen me and think I'm a little bit crazy, but I remind myself of what happened. I wake up in the morning and I always make sure that I look at my leg. I can't pick up my big toe, right? So I have to crack my toe. My toe always cracks and it hurts in the morning when I crack it because it gets stiff. And all right, my accident happened like June 19th, 2003.
Right.
It happened. It sucked, it was painful, but it happened. It's a part of my blueprint. It doesn't define me, but it's a part of my story. But a lot of people allow that one moment to define the rest of the story. You can't allow that to happen. And you have to be vulnerable enough with yourself to accept the fact that shit happened. Bad stuff happens to everybody. You have to drive your own car, and if you don't drive it, somebody else is gonna drive it for you. And that other person who's driving it may not be a person, it may be a darkness, that entity that we talked about, that is easy to get lost and consumed in. I did say thank you, probably when I was 30 years old, 5 years ago. I said, thank you for happening to me. I'm still clawing now. I don't think you ever claw your way out. I think it's a process. It's easy to go back into that. That's why I talk about, reaffirming what happened and reaffirming where you want to go to yourself. We spend so much time talking to other people and giving other people advice on what they need to do in their life. And sometimes you need to sit down and give yourself advice on what's best for you.
What's some of the best advice you've given yourself?
Wow. Can't live in the past. I have to be present. I think there are a lot of times that you would see me in moments where I wouldn't be there because I was too busy reaccounting what was instead of what's happening currently. Not even what's going to happen. Like I just wasn't even present. I was just there. Some other advice I think that I have to continue to be better. I know it's simple, but I still have faults, man. I still make mistakes. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect in relationships. I've hurt people and I've been hurt. It's a challenge for me to really let somebody in to, my own demons that I suffer from. It's a challenge for me in my relationship with my father. I love my dad wholeheartedly. Me writing the book hurt our relationship to a degree. I try to talk to him about it. It's a work in progress. It's amazing how some of the people that you love more than anything, you have a difficult time connecting to, but you feel the love, you recognize it. So I think there's still so many aspects of me where there's room for improvement and there's room for growth. And people say, I can't believe you got yourself out. I'm like, I'm still getting myself out of it. And it's never going to stop. And that's a good thing because it could have stopped on June 19th. And if it had stopped on June 19th, 2003, how sad would that have been that I would even have been able to spend time reflecting on the shit that I was doing. So now it's like I have a second chance. And I'm not gonna say that I sometimes don't get carried away or get lost in what I'm doing. I am extremely ambitious, right? Just like you, right? So, if that's work, look, my girlfriend needs to check me, my mom needs to check me. I have these people who are sounding boards in my life right now who are willing to say difficult things to me. And I ask, how many people do you have that you allow to be in your circle that can say painful things to you that you may not like to hear? And then once you hear them, are you willing to accept it? I've been lucky enough to have people in my life like that. And I make sure I try to stay surrounded with those people. It's fulfilling to recognize that nobody is the perfect end product and that everybody has stuff to work on. But once you're able to say, wow, that is something I need to work on, and you feel yourself taking the steps necessary to be better at it. I think the first thing is to, and I do this when I do talks, and it's amazing to see how squirmish and uncomfortable people get. You hear that? That's the only person you're dealing with is you when you're quiet. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to look inside yourself or to spend time with yourself. And whenever I do a talk or when I talk to people who I think are going through a lot of pain, I first tell them, okay, I understand what you're going through, but you just need to stop for 1 second. Because what we have a tendency to do is we over-inundate ourselves with other things that really don't matter to keep ourselves busy, to keep not thinking about the things that do matter. So once you're finally able to stop yourself and you're present with yourself, you have to go back and you have to address it. I'm not saying that you're gonna find a conclusion right then and there, but you have to recognize that whatever happened did happen. And I try to push people to find silver linings. I think there's truly a silver lining in everything. And once again, it's what you choose to focus your energy on. If you choose to focus your energy on all the things that God took away from you, or whatever entity that is that you believe in took away from you, then you will be consumed with that energy. If you try to force yourself to be consumed with the silver lining, even if you revert back, you have to remind yourself of the silver lining because it gives you a target goal. Like, it's mental targeting. Are you able to focus on something that allows you to get out of your own way? If you don't have a goal to help you get out of your own way, you will be stuck. So what is that? Is that your wife? Is that your parents? Whatever you need to use to be better for, you have to do that. And you have to find that it's only gonna come from listening to yourself and spending time with yourself. I do stuff all over, social media between Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'm trying all these different new shows. I'm trying to pitch a show called FU Money because I'm fascinated to hear what people's numbers are. Everybody has a number in which they feel like they can accomplish something. And it's amazing sitting down and talking to people. Some people's numbers are 2 million, some people's numbers are 500 million, and some people's numbers are 20,000. And it's not about the money at all. So, doing stuff like that, I'm dying to break out and be involved in entertainment, do more sit-down talks with people. And I think there's this beautiful collision between culture, sports, and politics right now. And it's so fascinating to watch different people decide to step up out of their particular silo and speak out about other issues that aren't the ones that they work in, right? And how you respond to that. Like, people saying to me if I make a comment about where we need to be politically. And I'm not saying that I'm for Trump or I'm against Trump. I don't agree with a lot of stuff Trump's doing right now, but he is our commander in tweets. Our commander in chief. You got that. So I did a little series called Reunited States of America, where it was fascinating for me to do a social experiment and to see if people are willing to listen to what other people have to think. So I sat down with a gay couple. There were 2 Caucasian males who were Republicans, right? Which is almost, it's oxymoron within itself, right? To a certain degree. And they talked a little bit about the history and about, things that happened to them in their family and why they voted for Trump. But I didn't, I think all these people that I sat down with expected me to kind of retort and have somewhat of a contentious dialogue. And I just sat there and I listened. And then I let that stuff play across all my different social media channels. And everything starts with a conversation. And if you're not willing to hear the other side and understand where the other side is coming from, you can still disagree on a multitude of issues. But you don't understand what that person has gone through that helps them see the world the way they decide to see the world. But once you understand that, then you can find common ground for a conversation. So trying to do things that spark those kind of thoughts, intellectually stimulate people instead of just do crazy things for views. I like this. I don't think this happens enough.
Well, that leads very beautifully into my last question, which is, what is the impact that you want to have on the world?
I just want to be the best version of me. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I hope that I can help other people get out of their own way. And I do believe that the series of events that happened in my life happened for a reason. And I chose to listen to those reasons and kind of follow through on those things that I felt like I needed to work on. And just let people know that if we're lucky, you're always going to be a work in progress. And you have to want to work. You have to be willing to put in the time and the effort. And it's funny because you said something I really pride myself on that I thought I did as a basketball player. I did always stay in the gym, and I was the guy to always try to get up more shots than you. After Kobe said that, I took my ass back to the gym and worked out more. But you never get better if you're not willing to put in the time. And basketball is very similar to the game of life. There's going to be ups and downs. Sometimes you may turn the ball over 7 times in a row. But if you put in the work and you constantly put in the work, you can't allow that one mistake to go into the next play.
I love that idea.
If you allow 7 turnovers to go into my next possession with the basketball or that next possession in life, if you allow that divorce or if you allow that passing away of somebody or that loss of a career to go into the next 8 plays, you'll have another 8 turnovers. You have to be willing to say, that was back there, that happened, but it doesn't mean it needs to happen now. And the more I can help people understand that they're lucky to even be in a position to have a chance to reinvent or to readdress things from their past. It doesn't matter, you get somebody that did you wrong, say something to them, man. Your time you have on this earth is short. And I lose sight of that too. Doing talks like this, they help me. You should always look for help. And that's why I like to surround myself with those type of people, because they always help you get out your own way.
It was one of those years where I got easily lost into the glitz and the glamour of what the NBA was able to provide. And, when my stint at Duke was very sheltered, we were kept in the bubble pretty much.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I lost 13 games, Manny, my 3 years in college. I lost 13 games in my first month of the NBA. And not only was it losing, but guys seemed to not care about losing. And, guys talking to women throughout the course of the game, guys doing drugs throughout the season. And eventually I got to the point where I didn't care. And it took all but a year for me to become a shell of myself. And that eventually led me to becoming extremely rebellious. I had a lot of conflict with my parents. And I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And that's what money did to me. And it changed me, which led me to get a motorcycle. I tore my peroneal nerve, which allows you to pull your foot up and down. I severed my pubic symphysis about 13 inches, very similar to when a lady has a child. The most damaging injury that I had that didn't allow me to come back and play was me not being able to pick my left foot up because I had drop foot, and I still do to this day. I had a tendon transfer where they cut the tendon off the inside of my foot, put it to the top. So when I walk, I think about pulling my foot inwards, which pulls it up. So I had to teach myself how to walk again. But the most debilitating injury was me having nerve damage in my pelvis area because, it took a year and a half for me to be able to get an erection again. And that was humbling more than anything. The chances of me having a kid were slim at that time. I felt like somebody was stabbing me in the leg with a dull knife throughout any second of the day where I would start screaming hysterically. So Oxycontin was something that numbed that pain for a long time. Also, your nerve regenerates an inch per month. I had over 2 feet of my nerve that needed to regenerate. So it was a long process, an arduous one. So I was on it for 2 years. And then, just not the physical pain, but eventually what Oxycontin helped me with was just mentally facing people. Still to this day, there's not one day that goes by, Manny, where somebody doesn't say to me, oh yeah, you're that guy, you threw away your career in a wreck, right? Or fans like, oh man, you killed us, man. You killed all of us Bulls fans. Right. So people reminded me of the worst day of my life. And Oxycontin for me throughout that time was a way for me to
escape that reality.
Exactly, numb them out too. Well, basketball didn't bring me up, and what I try to tell people is that every successful company has a board. There are people that the CEO needs to answer to. And when he answers to them, they also help him brainstorm on how to make the company better, more successful.
Right.
Why don't people look at themselves the same way? So I ask people all the time, who's on your board? Is it a board of negativity? Is it a board of people that actually hold you to a higher standard than you hold yourself to? And after my second suicide attempt, I decided to make a board. And I started soliciting people and asking them for their advice, asking them to be brutally candid with me, tell me about some of the flaws I had. And they were upfront, they were transparent. And we started working on things. And I just started to fight to pick myself back up. And I think that's the mentality also that I had from the court, because I'm extremely competitive.
Right.
And I was able to translate that into the bigger game, which is the game of life. While I was going through my life, especially the last 5 or 6 years, I'm a very talkative person, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And I love to randomly hear other people's stories. And one of the things that really became noticeable was that, wow, like everybody's had an accident in some form or fashion. I had a friend that went through a divorce. His wife left him for a hedge fund manager a couple of years ago, and he was out of it for a year of his life, drinking a lot, not caring what people thought. His accident. Another friend that lost a child during birth, her accident. You losing your job, whatever it might be. We all have these things that have happened that can bring you to a low place where you feel like you're scraping on to hold it all together. So my thing is, what makes me any different? There's nothing. I mean, I just happen to be on TV, I happen to talk about sports. I'm just like everybody else.
Right.
So I was inspired to say, okay, like this is how I got out of it, and maybe this book can help other people get out of their own way as well. That's the thing. I think for a long time, I was held captive by my accident. I was a prisoner in my own mind. And it wasn't until later, Manny, where I was like, you know what? This accident doesn't define me, but it's a part of my story. And that's okay, because we all have a journey.
Look, I give my parents a lot of credit. I never really had money growing up, so all of a sudden you get drafted and you're able to buy anything you want, and somebody's saying, hey, you're gonna have millions in your bank account. I wanted to go out and buy everything. I mean, there were things I wanted to do for my parents, buy my mom a car, buy my mom a fur jacket. Who didn't want to take their mother on a shopping spree in downtown Chicago, start a business with my dad? But it's easy to fall into the traps of keeping up with the Joneses. So my parents had this great idea about, hey, look, we're gonna bank all of your NBA checks. We're gonna put it into an investment fund. We're gonna try to grow it at a small percent. And the only money you're allowed to spend is your endorsement money, which was good for me, but at the same time, it was like being 21 years old, I feel like this is my first chance to be a man, and my parents still had control of me in some sort of fashion. And that eventually led to my demise, just the control factor in my life in general. It's really all about the hustle. It's about having the mentality. And it blows my mind when I see guys who are millionaires walk into places and they're like, oh, okay, I want to go get that car for $120,000. I'm like, hey, why don't you just go to the founder of the car dealership and say, hey, look, I'm going to give you courtside seats. Let's work out a deal. You'll find it interesting how many people, if you talk to them that way, you end up getting like 40 or 50% off. So trying to teach kids how to hustle in that capacity, and also make them think about the long-term play. I mean, look, it's great that you can make $7 million a year for 5 years, but then what are you going to do when the lifespan of your career is 8 years? And you've been spending $3 or $4 million a year when you're making 7. You can't maintain that lifestyle that way. So getting them to think about the bigger picture, for a guy like Marshawn Lynch to retire playing football with $50 million, that's something that you can leave a legacy for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you slow yourself down, you take a second to reflect about how far you've came, right? And that whole year prior, I have been battling different things. I've been battling partying with teammates. I've been battling losing, guys not caring about losing. I've been battling my parents in different ways because now all of a sudden we have money, and money changes things. It changes the dynamics between your family, especially when my mom and dad were working for me. So there was a power control struggle there for a minute, especially between my dad and I, because we're both alphas. There were certain things I wanted to do that he didn't agree with, but I was going to do them anyway because I felt like I was in control, i.e. the bike. And that day just started off with one of those great days where I decided to take my bike out instead of my Corvette or my Tahoe. Yeah. And that day led to my accident, which forever changed my life. If you go back and you think about your life, there are always signs, right? Like, prime example, relationships, right? I don't know if you've ever been in a relationship where you have a gut feeling where you're like, oh, something doesn't feel right. But you have a way of justifying things in your mind. You're like, well, maybe I'm just tripping, maybe blah, blah. And how many times does that happen to people every single day? And, reflecting back upon that moment, there were so many signs from me. Not only signs from my friends and family being like, what the hell are you doing? But also signs like the keys, and me literally swiping the Tahoe keys or the Corvette keys out of the way, and me thinking about it, like, should I ride my bike today? I shouldn't be on my bike in the first place, but screw it, it's a nice day, I want to do it, I can control my life, and we're all not in control of anything, really.
Yeah.
I was leaving the meeting, and we were both walking out the door, and I was like, all right, man, I'll see you later. And he's like, man, you shouldn't be riding that bike. And I said, Kevin, I shouldn't be doing a lot of things, right? Like any other response a 21-year-old will give at that given time. And I got on my bike and I started to pull away. I didn't have a helmet on. I didn't have any protective gear at the time. And the way you justify that is there was no helmet law in Chicago at the time. So why do I need to wear a helmet? And I just got a new muffler on my bike. And as I was pulling away, I revved my engine because I, for some reason, wanted to show off to Kevin. Being on a billboard on I-90 apparently wasn't big enough for my ego. I had to let the one person in the neighborhood know I had a new muffler that day. I revved the engine once. I revved it twice, the second time louder than the first. And on the third rev, in the middle of the rev, I heard the bike go click, click. The bike popped up on me. It slipped into gears. And I should have let go of the bike at that given moment, but it was all about control for me. I just bought this new bike. I wanted to control me keeping the bike safe. And when I grabbed onto the handlebars to try to wrestle it down to the ground, I pulled back on the throttle even more. The bottom wheel spun out. And the next thing you know, I was headed towards a utility pole going 65, 70 miles per hour. And I tried to turn the bike at the last second, but I wasn't able to get out of my own way. And the pole clipped the whole left side of my body. And next thing I know, I'm laying on the grassy knoll area between the sidewalk and the curb. My chest is laying on it as if I'm laying on my stomach. The curb is pushed up against my navel, and my legs are laying on the street as if I'm laying on my side. And it's the weirdest feeling to explain, that when you could feel your hand touching your leg, but you can't feel your leg touching your hand back. And every time I kept rubbing my leg, I kept looking at my hands ready to see blood, and I didn't see anything. And it was at that moment, something in my soul just told me I threw it all away, and I started screaming that out. I threw it all away. I went over 2.5 months in the hospital. I've had over 10 different surgeries. I severed my pubic symphysis, which is what a woman goes through when they have a child. My pubic symphysis split open 13 inches. I dislocated my right knee. I tore every ligament in my right knee. I dislocated my peroneal nerve, which allows you to pull your foot up and down. Also severed an artery in my left leg. And it was, look, all the physical pain I went through in order to get back to learn how to walk again, it paled in comparison to the mental agony I lived with for the next 10 years of my life. Look, being in the hospital room, you have to live with your own thoughts, right? And it's the first time I spent time by myself. And I would be remiss to say I didn't go over the accident millions of times a day, right? You're thinking about, why was I so young and brash? Why was I so idiotic to put myself in that predicament in the first place? And that's sometimes how life works out. The first person actually I remember seeing and having a conversation with was Coach K, the guy who's now Hall of Fame coach over at Duke. And he came into my hospital room that same night and gave me a pendant and told me to give this back to him when I play basketball again. And it was one of those surreal moments because he's so good at getting you out of your own way. And for me, look, this life is all about the next play. That's something that he taught me from the time I was 17 years old. You're always going to make mistakes. It's part of everyday life, but it's your ability to pick yourself back up after that mistake that really goes to show who your true character is.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to be a millionaire, right? Who doesn't dream about that? Where I'm from, Plainfield, New Jersey, times were difficult. I watched my mom work multiple jobs. I watched my dad wake up in the morning at 4:30 to take a train all the way into New York, to come back home at 9 o'clock at night. So you feel like you threw away this opportunity for not just your dreams about what you wanted to achieve, but my mom wanted to have a business one day. I wanted to do all these things for my mother. She went back to school and got her master's degree. She'd been busting her tail her whole life. I wanted to provide that lifestyle for her. My dad wanted to, open up a family business and create a legacy, for his son and for my kids one day. I threw all that away, and that's a ton of guilt to live with. And I was already on pain medication because of my surgeries, and eventually the pain medications were able to take me to a different place where I was able to not pay attention to the voices that reminded me of the worst day of my life. And look, that was the most painful thing of them all, right? To be walking down the street in New York City and somebody be like, "Hey, you're that? Oh yeah, you're the guy that got in that wreck, right?" I mean, how is that? How many people have mistakes or they have accidents, but they're not reminded of those accidents? You kind of push that accident to the back of your mind to try to move on from it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed that same opportunity. I was forced to remember it every day, and that led me into depression.